You see, you never know where it's going to happen. It's like in World War II. There is an islands off the coast of France, the Channel Islands. And during World War II, the Germans took them over. Well, the people wanted to fight against the Germans. And so what are the first things that come to your mind when you're going to fight the Germans? What are some of the things you would think about? Bombing, right? Get some guns, right? Cut off their communication, cut the wires, disrupt them. There was a group of women who knitted scarves and mittens and head coverings for the British Army. And you're thinking to yourself, why? You get cold. Let me tell you where it gets cold. When you're flying an airplane. And they didn't have heat back then. And they were open. And these women, their mittens and their scarves and their head coverings were a godsend to these pilots because you could freeze up there. It allowed them to fight. Now, the women were just knitting. But don't you think those pilots said, thank God for those women and what they did? It was nothing significant. Socks, mittens, head coverings. And yet the pilots thought of them as fellow workers in the fight. Fellow workers in the fight. Wasn't big, wasn't flashy. It's like my friend Lois. No, excuse me. It's like my friend Lois. One more. Lois and Ben are a family that we got to know when we lived in Delaware. And one day, one of their daughters brought home a guy. And we knew Ben and Lois from church, deeply committed people to Jesus. And one of their daughters brings home a guy who's from Turkey. Nice guy. He's not a Christian. He's a Muslim. His family is Muslim. That's all he's ever known. And what does Lois do? Well, Lois belonged to a group that was called Bicota. And that stood for Be Ye Kind One to Another. It's from Ephesians. And so she decided she was going to be kind to Bora and be nice to him and welcome him. It was through the testimony of kindness that Bora eventually talked to someone and gave his heart to Jesus Christ. Not because she was smart, not because she could argue why Islam was wrong and Christianity was right, but she earned the right to show it by showing it.
She was part of the church.
She was part of the church, a very powerful part of the church. And it wasn't up front, when it's in their kitchen, on their back porch, wherever. Not a public thing at all.